In this final installment, which replaces the May 30th class, you should have already watched the presentations on the course overview and on grammar, run-on sentences. That was a lot of fun, I'm sure. Now I'm going to talk about the writing process part 2. Part 1 of the writing process is included in your asynchronous activities in this week, so don't worry, you're not missing out. But I wanted to talk to you about generating ideas, because very often it's the first place to start when you're writing. And I wanted to mention some techniques, not all, that will help you to generate ideas, because there's nothing worse than looking at a blank screen or looking at a blank page and that's all you think about. It's kind of like, you know, when you're introducing someone around to a group of people, and even though you know this person really well, you cannot remember his name. And all you can think of then is not his name, but how embarrassed you are and how awkward this is, right? So I'm going to give you some techniques that might help you through that. Not the name retention, but generating ideas. All right. Oh, I should mention, you should have a piece of paper or an alternate screen ready to do a little bit of practice. I'm going to pause throughout the course of this presentation so you have a little bit of time to practice. So you might want to stop it now and get together this piece of paper and a pen, or to open up another screen in Word so that you can write. All right, let's start. While generating ideas, these techniques are going to help you to spark your imagination. They're going to take out the part of your brain that says, I can't think of anything, I can't think of anything, I completely cannot think of anything, and get to that part of the brain that's creative. It's a different part. And these ideas help access that part. Of course, generating ideas helps to facilitate writing. It's really so much better to have far too many ideas than not enough. Even if you know what it is you're going to write about, you still have to come up with ideas that will support what it is you're writing about. And you will want to only choose those very great ideas, not the ones that are sort of mediocre. And then, as I mentioned before, to avoid blank screen syndrome, where all you can see is that blinking cursor and nothing else. I don't know, do cursors even blink anymore? We digress. So there's a number of techniques that people use, that writers use, that anyone uses to generate ideas. I haven't come up with them. I'm showing you several today, but there are others, and there might be some that you're already using that work really well, or you might discover one in here that works better for you. I'm not suggesting you need to use all of these. I'm just suggesting that you should use anything to help come up with ideas. Okay, we're going to start with free writing. I'm going to give you a moment to, I'm going to give you a prompt too, so don't get started, to practice free writing. And in free writing, you just write. You don't edit. You don't judge. You don't say that's not a good way to do it. You don't say that's not how we spell it. You don't say that's a bad sentence. None of that. You just let the ideas flow. So you don't edit or criticize. You don't worry about spelling and grammar. You should set a timer, and the reason for that is because once we've set a timer, then it helps us to access our creative, because we know we only have a specific minute. And it shouldn't be too long, like no more than 5 minutes to do this. I'm going to give you a prompt and set a timer for you and allow you to practice. So here's your prompt. Write about the person who influenced you most in your life. And I'm going to set a timer. Not for 5 minutes. Let's make it for 30 seconds. Okay, how was that? Did you get some, doesn't matter if you got just garbage down on the page, even if it was, I have no idea what I'm doing. As long as there's any writing down, at least it's a start. Some people find this is, I like to use free writing. Another one is brainstorming, and this is usually best done in a group or with at least a partner. And the reason for that is because you can spur on each other's creativity. Someone will say something which then sparks an idea in someone else. Once again, there's no criticism. Any idea is valid. There's no, undermining someone's ideas in order, because then it shuts down that creativity. And once again, set a timer. So let's just try brainstorming. Sadly, you're going to have to work on your own unless you've got a buddy there. I'm going to give you a prompt in 30 seconds and come up with as many ideas as you can about what makes a happy childhood. Okay, hopefully you came up with some ideas. Brainstorming is another good thing. What else have we got? Well, this is a very visual kind of approach where you map out visually some ideas, either mind mapping or tree diagramming, Venn diagramming, these kinds of ways where you represent the ideas visually. You would place the main idea at the top of the page or in the center of the page, and then all around it you just write down ideas. Again, allow any idea to come in, and then you could color code the ideas to kind of start to sort them, or you could cross out ideas or start to organize your ideas. This is what that looks like. That's a very elaborate example, but it could also look like this. So let's see if you want to give a try to just writing out some ideas, just as if you were going to represent them visually. And here's your prompt. Create a mind map or diagram that explains your personality. Begin. How is that? Just another way to, my dog says hello. Just another way to try and access those creative sensors of your brain. If you're really a visually oriented person, this might be a really good way for you to give it a try. Okay, that's another way. Well, coming up with questions. Sometimes it's easier to ask questions than to start to think about answers. And so this idea of just asking a bunch of questions that are related to your topic is a really good way to access different ideas. You can use the journalist questions, the who, what, where, when, why, and how to get into your topic. And from there, that might start to give you some ideas about what it is you want to write about. So let's try coming up with some questions about rites of passage, things like weddings, bar mitzvahs, communion, birthdays, just as many ideas as you can, as many questions as you can about rites of passage. Go. Okay, maybe you came up with some questions like, what are they? Or who creates them? Or when do they occur? Or where do they take place most often? Or why do we have them? Excuse me. How do they change us? That kind of thing. So now you have a bunch of ideas, a bunch of ways to come up with ideas. Free writing, brainstorming, mind mapping, diagramming or tree diagramming, and questioning. I want you to think about different techniques, any one of these that you thought would be very interesting or that would work with you to come up with a significant time in your life, because this will help you in your first essay, which is going to be about a significant time. Any of these ideas or ones that you already use will help you to kickstart your writing. In your first essay, you need to come up with some ideas about something significant, and let's talk about your first essay. And on your first week's work is sorry, let me just fix this. In your first week's work, I'm going to ask you to come up with some brainstorming or however you get to them ideas that you might use to write about in your first essay, which is going to be about personal writing. So let's take a look at what I'm going to ask for. It's going to be 750 words long, which is about 2.5 to 3 pages of double-spaced type, in which you will focus on a specific single experience that caused you to think because it taught you a significant lesson, gave you a new understanding, or left a lasting impression. Your essay should be thesis-driven as you reveal a main idea. That's all that thesis means, main idea. It unifies your essay. So it's only about one thing. Clarifies your purpose and suggests your primary strategy of narration. You're going to tell me a story. Set your plot into motion after a brief exposition revealing setting, characters, point of view, and thesis, and we're going to talk about all those things. Establish conflict. There's no story without a conflict, or adversity, which is the heart of the story, something that you're struggling with. Create suspense. Let the rising action build to a climax, and maybe offer an epiphany, a sudden understanding of some sort, a resolution, or a denouement where you wrap up all the pieces. Your essay might include irony, too. Use dialogue to let the reader hear the speaking voices of your characters. In your essay, offer a narrative commentary on your experience. You can comment on emotion, the meaning, the significance, or a universal truth that you discovered. Use description because it will help you to sketch your setting and your characters. The more specific your details, the more interesting your writing will be. Use figurative language like metaphor, simile, hyperbole, and personification. Use vivid and concrete diction and imagery appealing to the 5 senses where appropriate. And we're going to talk about all this stuff as we move forward in the coming weeks. The motto for essay number 1 is show, don't just tell. And by showing, that means you try and put the reader in the situation, and you try and use specific language to get the reader there. And I will tell you that you don't have to tell the truth. I don't assign this essay to learn about your deep, dark secrets. I assign it because I think this is the most accessible kind of writing to start with. So you can start with an idea that actually happened to you and then extrapolate or add on or add new details or add a little lie. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if this happened to you or if it happened to a friend. I just want you to be able to write with some kind of meaning. And I will tell you that the more strongly you feel about a subject, the easier it will be to write about it. So balance that with your need for privacy and come up with a good story. I've got an example here of what one might look like. And I want you to watch for the specifics in the description, for the vivid dialogue, for the fact that it stays on one topic and that there's a conflict introduced right away. It's called the wrong present. When I was 8, my burgeoning grown-up mind murdered my child's heart. And it happened on the most special day of the year. During the lead up to Christmas, that thrilling time when the falling snow is welcomed, the lights on the houses cheerily reflect off the icicles and excited children count the days to Santa's arrival, I had heard some disconcerting comments from my older brothers. Declan Benwork says Santa Claus is a fake, said Carl. Yeah, those guys in the mall are just actors. George was the oldest, and I thought he pretty much knew everything. It's just Mom and Dad buying the gifts and wrapping them in different paper, but I found the role they use. How could this be? Magically, every year on Christmas morning, we kids came down the stairs to a pile of presents that had not been under the tree the night before. The cookies had been eaten, there were even crumbs, the milk drunk, and the note taken. To me, this was indisputable evidence. But my brothers, 2 and 4 years older, had lived longer on the earth and were much bigger and wiser than me. How could an 8-year-old girl not at least give some credence to their claims? You guys, I had gotten the nerve to confront the issue. How can he be fake? He comes every year. My eyes were starting to tear and my stomach was beginning to feel a little sick. You're just a kid and it's a lie grown-ups tell. Carl was always the meanest one. In fact, both my brothers had little time for their younger sister, but I was just a nuisance. Maybe they were just being spiteful. Yeah, that was it, but I had to know. So when my mother took us all to Eaton's and I had my turn on Santa's lap, I told him I wanted a Christina doll. What did you ask for? My mom held my hand as she led us away from the crowd. Kerplunk. You know the game with all the marbles, I said, my eyes shifting upwards to view her. Oh, that sounds like a lot of fun. My experiment was set. Now all I had to do was wait. And as every lucky boy and girl knows, that's the hardest part of Christmas. Or at least it was, until the big day finally arrived. In all the excitement of the day, the breakfast that takes too long, cleaning it up, my father slowly doling out one gift at a time, watching it being opened and then the thank yous, I forgot about my experiment. It was after the big feast with the relatives. The men were in the living room, rubbing their tummies. The women were in the kitchen, working and laughing, and most of us kids were playing among the wrapping, ribbon, and new toys. I sat back and surveyed the scene, satiated and happy. But then I remembered. I looked over to where my brother and a few cousins were playing Kerplunk, and my heart sank. I saw my mother, who had come back to pick up more dishes, and she beamed at me. I turned away, devastated. My experiment had been successful, but my Christmas day had been ruined. Okay, so you hear the conflict that starts in that story. You hear the very specific description that helps move the story along, the plot. First this, then this, then this. The exposition explaining how old our narrator is, how old her brothers are, what time of year it is, what is normally expected, helping to fill in the story and add the details so the reader can follow along. That's what I'm looking for from you. It's due on June 20th at 7 p.m. So we do have a few weeks to look at this, and I'll be asking for bits and pieces of it as we move forward, starting with next week, a few ideas about what you want to write about. We'll see you then.